Each low-skill, low-wage migrant in this country is costing the British taxpayer between £150,000 and £1 million.
Hey guys, Matt Goodwin. Thanks for joining us on GB News. Now, I just gave a big speech at the Reform Party conference in Wales. This is ground zero of what I think is going to be the next big revolt in British politics. I talk about everything from our immigration crisis to the collapse of the borders to a political class in London, Westminster, Oxford, Cambridge that doesn't really understand the country that surrounds it. So here are some highlights from my speech. Check it out. If you like what you see, don't forget to hit like and subscribe.
Is even today, nearly a decade on from the vote for Brexit, nearly a decade on from that first vote for Donald Trump, from California to New York to Rome to Paris, the liberal establishment don't understand what's happening around them. They don't get it. They don't understand it. This is what happens when you ignore millions of ordinary people. Whatever you think about the Donald, whether you like him, whether you don't, whatever, this is what happens when you not just ignore ordinary people, but you deride them, you insult them, you berate them, you call them Nazis, you call them fascists, you call them garbage. This is what happens when you obliterate the working class through globalization and big firms that send the jobs to China to benefit from cheap migrant labor, while the same liberal elites here bring in uncontrolled migration just to allow companies to keep their costs low, their profits high, and to satisfy the sense of moral righteousness of the likes of Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell and Emily Maitlis. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. Millions of ordinary people have simply had enough. They've had enough of a Labour government. I call it a government, but it's a student union society. That's what it is. It's a student union society. They say they're not taxing working people. Anybody who has ever run a business knows that's exactly what they're doing by raising taxes like national insurance contributions. They're clobbering people with regulation. They're borrowing tens of billions of pounds, which our children and their children are going to have to pay off for decades to come, all to get to growth rates of 1.5%. I mean, the economics of this simply don't make sense. They're doing this at the same time, this Labour government and much of the political class, because it isn't just Labour. They're doing this while giving us what I call a Deliveroo economy. They're flooding our economy with low wage, low skill, cheap migrant workers from outside of Europe, most of them, who are good people. They want a better life. But they're taking more out of the national economy than they're putting in. Even the Office for Budget Responsibility, a big player in the blob, has admitted that each low-skill, low-wage migrant in this country is costing the British taxpayer between £150,000 and £1 million. There is no incentive for big businesses to create, to innovate, to be dynamic if you're endlessly supplying them with cheap labour. It doesn't make sense. It's bad economics. And Labour and the Conservatives are clinging to the same broken, failing consensus. Big state, big regulation, big taxation, big immigration, big on London, big on the university class, big on everybody and anything except ordinary people. But one of the things the new elite class do, it's very clever, is when you ask questions about these issues, when you say, why can't we control our own borders? Why can't we lower migration? Why can't we build an economy that works for small towns, for places outside of London? Why can't we keep our children safe and secure? They say, you're misinformed. It's misinformation. It's the new buzzword. What they're doing at the same time is they're blaming you for misinformation while keeping information from you. What my Gen Z students would say, they're gaslighting you. And I'll give you some examples. If you want to see arrest rates in this country by citizenship, by nationality, immigration status, country of origin, they won't give it to you. They've got it, they've got the information, but they won't give it to you. If you want to see welfare claims by nationality, immigration status, country of origin, they won't give it to you. Information on tax credits. If you want to see information on repeat offending. If you want to see detailed information on housing and accommodation costs, they've got it. They won't give it to you. Well, I've had enough, which is why last week I joined with Reform's 5 MPs to launch a national campaign to demand that Keir Starmer, Yvette Cooper and the Labour government make this information available to the British tax-paying public. If you're so confident that mass immigration is good for the economy, if you're so confident that mass immigration is keeping us safe and secure, if you're so confident that the people who are entering our country are not undermining and damaging our country, then give us the information. I'm willing to bet that the reason they're not giving us that information is because they know exactly what that information is going to show. It's going to show us the same things it shows us when governments do make that data available, like people in Denmark, or France, or Germany, or Italy, which is that actually mass immigration is not leading us to this sort of lovely paradise where we all sit on top of a rainbow and say, wow, what a wonderful society we're living in. Actually, what mass immigration is pushing us into is managed decline. As I say to people in Westminster, look at the global picture. 2 countries to consider, Canada and Sweden, notoriously the most liberal, tolerant societies on earth. I used to live in Canada. They used to be so supportive of this experiment with mass immigration. In Sweden, you cannot find anybody on the left or the right today who says this has been a good experiment that has made their society stronger. And in Canada, Justin Trudeau just had to go on X and say, I'm sorry, everybody, we can't carry this on. Legal immigration needs to be dramatically reduced. We need an immediate freeze on all non-essential migration. And illegal migration is much worse because it violates the sense of fair play that runs through these islands, that ultimately defines who we are. If you look at what is happening with the small boat crisis, 146,000 people entering the country illegally. The thing that makes this crisis particularly hard to swallow is we've just taken winter fuel payments of pensioners to save £1.5 billion. We've just smashed family farms to save about £1.8 billion. Our illegal migration crisis is currently costing us around £18 billion. So when I hear Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer saying they're solving this crisis, I don't laugh anymore. I'm absolutely outraged. What Labour are doing is dealing with the symptoms. They're not dealing with the underlying issue. And to make matters worse, they're even incentivising others to come. What Yvette Cooper has just done, I mean, it is mind-boggling. Aside from smashing the gangs being a modern equivalent of whack-a-mole, where you get rid of one gang and another one pops up because guess what? All you need is a dinghy. You're never going to eradicate the problem through that strategy. You're never going to eradicate it through intelligence. They've also just given asylum to tens of thousands of people who have broken our laws, entered our country illegally. And you might as well put a big flashing neon sign on the White Cliffs of Dover saying, come on in, we're a soft touch. There is no deterrent for people to make the journey. So of course the numbers will continue to go up and up and up. And when they say, well, what's your answer? It's very clear. We need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. We need to reform and repeal the Human Rights Act. We need an active deterrent. And more than anything, we need people in politics who understand that the priority in this country is not deferring to international courts, but keeping the British people and our children on these islands safe and secure. The one that really gets me, though, is the case of an Albanian who came into this country, decided that he'd break into a house, was arrested for burglary, was given 2.5 years, served 6 months. We put him on a plane, deported him out of the country. He smuggled his way back into the country illegally and then used the ECHR to stay in the country. You cannot make it up. We believe that the true source of power, authority, and legitimacy lies with the people. We believe that when it comes to the economy, when it comes to housing, when it comes to culture, when it comes to our understanding of our history, our ways of life, when it comes to how we manage our borders, how we keep people safe, how we approach the big issues of the day, I think we believe that our assessments, our calculations, our decisions, our policies should be anchored in the principle that it's the members of this national community who should always be prioritized above and beyond everybody and everything else. They'd like you to believe that this movement represents the fringe minority. But as we just saw in America, we represent the forgotten majority. And just before I finish, I want to say one thing about the Conservative opposition. And I use the word opposition loosely. If you think that a Conservative party, led by Kemi Badenoch, who has never really said anything of meaning around the issue of immigration, has ruled out leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, has just appointed as her number 2 a Remainer who has also ruled out leaving the ECHR, and has just appointed as her number 3 somebody who in Boris Johnson's government presided over the liberalisation of the entire immigration system. If you think that party is serious about changing and taking on the broken, failing, disastrous elite consensus in this country, then I have a Trump Tower to sell you. It ain't going to happen. What is going to happen is this movement is going to inherit the same realignment that just put Donald Trump back into the White House.